The Class 321 Dusty Bin was a 4-car British electric multiple unit, with 117 examples built between 1988 and 1991. Although none of the real units are in passenger service anymore, we can still potter about with them in Train Simulator. This video will focus solely on the 321 pack made by Armstrong Powerhouse and Wagons, and not the god-awful rendition that Dovetail released in December 2013. The Class 321 is one of AP's oldest motive power packs, having been released in February 2014, and I've had it since 2015. As of mid-February 2025, you can still buy the 321 pack from AP's website, where it costs £17, or around 35 New Zealand dollars at full price. Personally, I think that's too high a price for an add-on this old. This unit has some decent features for her age, but she lacks things like auto-numbering and a working GSMR module. For whatever reason, most of AP's older rolling stock doesn't have a passenger view either, and the 321 is no exception. The features you do get on the 321 include, but are not limited to, accurate physics, the option to do driver-only or guard operation, working destination displays, with the code list changing depending on which livery you're using, and a working driver reminder appliance, although there's no keyboard command for this thing. Normally you would just be able to press the Y key to turn the DRA on or off. The AP/Wagons Class 321 was definitely a product of her time, as the more recent AP rolling stock has evolved quite considerably where the fancier features are concerned. Just look at the Class 411 4SEP for example, even though the real thing is much older than the 321. Come to think of it, the Class 319 is probably a better unit to compare with the 321, since these are both from the Mark III derived family. There are 12 liveries included in the Class 321 pack, and the selection is as follows. Network Southeast, First Great Eastern, Silverlink, which ironically doesn't actually have any silver in it, One Railways, National Express East Anglia, NXEA ex First Great Eastern, NXEA White, London Midland, First Capital Connect, which might just be my favourite of the bunch, Greater Anglia ex NXEA, Greater Anglia White with blue doors, and Greater Anglia White with red doors. Curiously, the 3-strong Class 321/9 subclass is nowhere to be seen in this pack, and there's also a small amount of Scottish liveries included as representations of the Class 320 and Class 322. But even though these are supposed to be 320s and 322s, the data panels at the inner ends of the driving coaches still say 321, and the carriage slider in the imitation 320s cab still shows the numbers 4, 8 and 12 instead of 3, 6 and 9. From what I remember, the Glasgow suburban EMUs have traditionally only had 3 coaches each due to shorter platforms. At least, that's what people have told me. It's interesting to note that, for whatever reason, the imitation 320 only comes with 3 liveries, and there's only 1 livery for the imitation 322. Looking around the external model, I always thought it was fine, but the shape of the cab front always looked off to me. After comparing photographs of the real 321 with the TS Classic version, I think the problem lies in the area between the headlight clusters and the coupler. It's a little too tall on the TS Classic version, and the real one has a more noticeable curve in it. As for what the 321 is like to drive, she's fairly simple, in a sense. When you load into a scenario, the first thing you'll need to do is press the S key to move the reverser out of the off position. Then press Q to cancel the AWS self-test sequence, and press W to put the reverser in forwards. The throttle controls are A to increase and D to decrease, while the brakes are applied by pressing comma and released by pressing semicolon. Due to this model's age, you can't press Shift W to insert the master key, which is something you can do on AP's newer products. As for the physics, I can't verify if they're accurate or not due to not being an absolute expert on the 321s, but in any case, the unit doesn't feel overpowered. Anyone who's more knowledgeable on the real 321s are welcome to comment below and tell us whether or not the sounds are accurate. After all the years I've owned this pack, I've come to like the sounds, especially where the horn and motors are concerned. I also like the simple clunk sound you get when you move the throttle and brake levers in the cab. If what I remember from the tests I did a while back is anything to go by, then the imitation Class 320 is not fully compatible with the newer Class 318 that AP made with GU Studios, even though 320s and 318s often run coupled together in real life. Speaking of the Class 318, I reviewed this unit soon after her release in December 2023. Feel free to check out the reviews of this unit from either myself or Yowie. For one thing, he's more knowledgeable on the real 318s than I am. The lack of auto-numbering on the Class 321 is disappointing, although I dare say that it's probably due to the model's age. I appreciate AP adding auto-numbering as a staple feature of their more recent packs, since it was rather tedious clicking each individual coach in the scenario editor and adjusting the numbers to match, especially if, like me, you didn't have the patience to look up the exact numbers for each coach in a given unit. The lack of auto-numbering is a problem shared with the Class 313, Class 314, Class 315, and Class 456. All of these units were modelled by AP in wagons, and released in the years following the 321. The 321 also includes 8 scenarios. 1 for East Coast Main Line London to Peterborough, and 7 for Great Eastern Main Line London to Ipswich. But I almost never drive on the GEML route because, even after all these years, the blasted thing is still quite unstable, and even in the 64-bit version of TS. The 321 pack was first released long before things like the Class 313 EMU pack and Class 365 Enhancement pack, but the scenarios have since been updated to use rolling stock from the newer packs. As I've come to expect, most of the requirements for the 321 scenarios are from AP's own website, but the total cost of all the requirements was always going to be expensive anyway, since you need a wide variety of motive power to make a realistic ECML or GEML rail scene. The total cost of said requirements was a staggering £290 and 44 pence, or $634.68 NZD. That includes the base requirements for the Class 66, Class 91, Class 170 and Class 365 enhancement packs. Away from all the expensive add-ons, and for the longest time, my favourite route to run the 321 on is the Crouch Valley line, a 16.4 mile or 26.6 kilometre long branch line from Wickford to Southminster. This line is mostly single track, apart from the crossing loop at North Fambridge, and trundling along here with a 321 is so much more relaxing than the busy line out of London Liverpool Street. It's also a damn sight easier making scenarios on the Wickford to Southminster branch. I've never liked the tedious process of adding the masses and masses of AI trains for scenarios starting or ending at a big London terminus. Of course, 321s don't run on this line in real life anymore, as they have since been replaced by the newer Class 720 Aventra, a type that I'd really like to see in Train Sim World 5. As for what route I'd like to see the 720 made for, preferably London Liverpool Street to Southend Victoria, plus the Southminster branch, of course. Well actually, either London Liverpool Street to Southend Victoria and Southminster, or the entirety of the C2C network out of Fenchurch Street. Personally, I think AP should bring out an updated version of the 321, complete with a reworked model and new liveries that didn't exist when they made their original 321 pack, particularly the Greater Anglia Renortis refurbished units. It would also be cool to see the Swift Express variant, or whatever those 321s modified to carry mail are called these days. And for a laugh, they could also include a modified version of the 321 to recreate the proposed, but ultimately cancelled, rebuild as Class 600 hydrogen trains. Despite the pack's age, not to mention the presence of the bizarre imitation 320 and 322, I can still recommend Armstrong Powerhouse's Class 321 EMU pack for Train Simulator. I don't know how else to describe the sounds and driving experience other than just pleasant, and in my opinion, this unit deserves a 7.6 out of 10.